Number 10. Fetch is Sparky. Sparky was a kind of myth that came from FNAF 1. He was a dog that people theorized also existed as an animatronic but was more hidden. Some who refer to Sparky as an Easter egg point to like a poster or a drawing in the game, but it's never been confirmed that Sparky is real or exists or any of that. However, it is possible that this popular fan theory about Sparky's hidden existence could have inspired a real canon animatronic from the books, Fetch. Fetch appears in the second book in the Fazbear Frights series and is a robotic dog who is devastatingly loyal, doing anything to please the person he deems his owner, including kill. Fetch cannot talk and instead communicates via text. Creepy texts. Number 9. Ella is Charlie. This one comes to us from the man, the legend, the hero we all need when it comes to Freddy's lore, MatPat. And the first part of it is pretty self-evident if you are well versed in all of the reading material related to the franchise, but the second part requires a little bit more stitching together. Ella is a doll from the third book in the series, Fazbear Frights number 3, 1:35 a.m. She appears in a story of a woman named Delilah who had always wanted a child to call her own and to make happy after her own childhood was less than desirable. Unfortunately, Delilah was recently divorced and it seemed unlikely that she'd ever get a perfect child. She found Ella at a garage sale whose name echoed the name that she had picked out for her own dream child, Ella. Ella also looked just as Delilah had imagined that her daughter would. She bought Ella and took her home. Ella would end up driving Delilah insane with her alarm clock feature, and this would basically result in her death. But what's really interesting is that Ella's description also matched the description of another animatronic doll, also named Ella, from the Freddy Files book. This doll was one of the various animatronics that Henry made to resemble his daughter. Huh? Number 8. Sister Location Connection. Continuing off from the revelation that Ella is likely the animatronic or one of the animatronics made to represent a younger Charlie, it's also possible that Delilah is the body found in the vents in Sister Location. Sure, she doesn't end up going to an underground location to die in a vent, and is instead attracted to what is described as a 3-story office building that is still under construction, but is it possible that this is the location that would become Sister Location? What if that apparent 3-story office building ended up being Fazbear headquarters, which was later replaced with residential buildings, but the part of the location that was underneath, that was maybe also part of that headquarters, was kept and maintained by the original owners and transformed into Circus Baby's entertainment and rental? I ask you. The timeline is already pretty hard to follow along with, and as of yet is still very much up for debate, so it's possible this could happen. Of course, it's also likely that the dead body that was once found in the vents and Sister Location that is mentioned could just have been a maintenance employee who could have been found while Sister Location existed and not way back when the building was something else and under construction. But still, it's possible. Number 7. Who's really possessing Golden Freddy? This theory comes to us from the story The New Kid out of Fazbear Frights book number 3, 1:35 a.m. Here we learn that there might be more going on with Golden Freddy than we had initially anticipated. We meet a boy named Kelsey, who is a new kid at the protagonist's school. Kelsey is popular and well-liked, but also makes friends with 2 other kids who are outcasts, the other main characters of the story. In the end, one of them, the main protagonist, we could say, Devin, gets jealous and plots to scare Kelsey by trapping him in a Golden Freddy suit left in an abandoned Freddy's pizzeria. However, this all goes horribly wrong when Kelsey seemingly is killed by the spring locks in the suit, which of course malfunction, but in the end the guilt ends up leading Devin to return to the pizzeria and causes him to get his arm stuck and crushed in the Golden Freddy's jaw. What he sees within the suit seems to suggest that both Kelsey, who is likely a stand-in for Cassidy, the vengeful spirit, and the crying child might both haunt this animatronic. Number 6. Golden Freddy, robots in disguise. Maybe? To continue on this theory, I have my own twist as to what could really be going on with Kelsey and Golden Freddy. The story of The New Kid also seems to imply that Golden Freddy is in fact Kelsey, at least in a way. What I mean is that somehow Golden Freddy was able to change form and perhaps disguise himself as a human boy for the purpose of luring others into his trap. or at least create some kind of manifestation that was Kelsey, because I know they both exist in the same place at the same time, but just hear me out. The points that suggest that Kelsey is the true spirit of Golden Freddy, or perhaps the animatronic himself, is Devin's reaction to Kelsey, who feels strangely compelled to stab his newfound perfect friend to check if he's a robot, which is pretty weird. And while MatPat suggests Kelsey's eye color could be a reference to the vengeful spirit, the color of blue is also similar to the color of Freddy's eyes. Now, while Golden Freddy only has 2 white pinprick-sized lights for eyes, or is depicted as having no eyes at all, we could surmise that his eye color, if he had proper ones, would be shared with the model he's closest to, the mascot Freddy Fazbear. So his blue eyes could also be another loose connection to Freddy and thereby Golden Freddy. Number 5, Kelsey is Andrew. Okay, one more theory here for you in regards to the new kid story. Some fans seem to think that Kelsey could be some kind of manifestation of Andrew's spirit. They believe the corpse that Devin sees when he looks into the Golden Freddy while his arm remains stuck is actually that of Andrew's, and that Andrew was one of the victims of the man in room 1208, who is likely William Afton. Andrew is a vengeful spirit who attached his soul to the man who hurt him, so that he'd never be able to pass on or achieve peace. It's believed that Andrew could have at some point been attached to Golden Freddy, and could be the crocodile-masked victim. Another theory, as Andrew's spirit is seemingly gone now, is that Andrew's anger-filled touch at one point infected Golden Freddy, making it lash out, seeking vengeance, and causing the spirits within it to become more aggressive and murderous, to become vengeful spirits. Number 4, the FNAF 3 protagonist. In the final story in the newest Fazbear Frights book, number 8, Gumdrop Angel, we meet Hudson. Hudson ends up working as one of the security guards for the Fazbear Fright attraction. Like the protagonist in FNAF 3, he is plagued by hallucinations, which seem to prey on his fears. This has caused fans to speculate that Hudson, from what we found, could be the protagonist that we play as in FNAF 3. Number 3, 1985 location is the Pizzaplex? Huh? Let me just start by saying this is a very loose theory based off of the description of what Oswald sees in Into the Ball Pit and built around details from Happiest Day, the minigame. These two events seem to be one and the same. Well, Happiest Day being a minigame retelling of that day, but these murders didn't seem to happen the way we'd expect with the children being stuffed into suits. Instead, a bunny figure lays them out in the 1985 location that Oswald travels to for all to see. Who else do we know that resembles a bunny and is a villain? Vanny, William Afton's reluctant follower, and in the Happiest Day minigame, what other masks do we notice the children wearing that we walk past? A gator and a wolf. Perhaps Montgomery Gator and Roxanne Wolf. Could this mean that the murders took place in the original Pizzaplex, which we'll either visit in Security Breach or at least hear the story of? Is it possible that the Pizzaplex is another relaunch and reopening of an older location that was closed due to these original murders which happened in 1985? But if they happened in 1985, was Vanny there? Were they the one that did it? Or is this like a recreation? I don't know. I swear, if we do some time traveling in Security Breach, my mind is going to be broken. I'm going to be like, there's no way we can piece together this timeline now. As soon as you put time travel in, woo, that's too much. Number 1, the real motivation behind the murders. So this one is kind of a leap based on theories we have already discussed here. It doesn't specifically relate to a specific book or a story, so much as it has been inspired by theories that came from specific books and stories. You with me? Okay, so if we see animatronics in the books that resemble humans, and if you believe that it's possible that Michael himself could be an animatronic created by William, possibly to act as a new son or to replace Crying Child, who perhaps Michael was made to resemble, is it possible that this whole murder thing has been an attempt towards not just bringing back the children he's lost, but to work towards some kind of evolution for humans? Maybe William's mad science is less about murder and more about helping, in his own twisted way, humans to evolve. Just go with me here. As humans, there are many things that we can't do, but that machines can. Perhaps these experiments were William's way of seeking immortality for humans, and all of this has been one crazy experimental trial to discover if it's possible to fuse human souls to robots, or animatronics, if you will, so that we might move past our fleshy shells and evolve into something greater, something more. It's just a theory, of course, but it would make sense as to why William tries to keep Elizabeth away from Circus Baby, but says he made the creation for her. The transfer or bonding process wasn't perfected yet, but he intended to move her consciousness from her human body to the animatronic when the process was perfected. And that's also why Circus Baby was made to shapeshift. He would have been able to calibrate her ideally to Elizabeth's form, so she'd even look the exact same, and in theory be able to shift and age as she grew up, and basically be immortal because she'd never die. I'm just saying, maybe William was trying to help this whole time, but then he kind of lost his mind in doing that as his children, passed on, and so now everyone's a robot and it's all a mess.
Number 10, Room for One More. Room for One More is likely a story that alludes to all the ways animatronics seem to sneak around and escape or infiltrate various places. In the direct case of this story, we see them actually attempting to sneak out of the complex, at least when it comes to the mini arenas featured here, who attempted to sneak out inside Stanley, the security guard on duty, who can't help but fall asleep each night. And if I may add, were successful. Room for One More is also a reference to a line that Lefty says in Ultimate Custom Night, which could also have a double meaning considering that Lefty in Pizzeria Simulator is a disguise used to sneak in the puppet. Room for One More is from Fazbear Frights, number 3, 1:35 AM. Number 9, Friendly Face. This is the first story where we actually see a lost life somehow revived via an animatronic. Or well, I guess we've seen lost lives sort of revived via animatronics, but not in this way before. In the case of Friendly Faces, Fazbear Entertainment only promises to be able to revive lives with a lost pet. The Friendly Faces service also only claims to be able to use the DNA that they get to recreate the face of your lost pet, which is then put on an animatronic animal that is sent to you. Apparently, it does not recreate the personality of the lost animal. However, this is still a step closer than we were to animatronics being used to bring back life, as opposed to being possessed by spirits. So like I said, this is kind of similar, but it's pretty different because these aren't, well, they're lives that are still dead, but they're lives that are being brought back with an animatronic intentionally, as opposed to kind of being possessed. This could be a story that is alluding to William Afton using animatronics to bring back the lives of his children after they were lost. Perhaps bringing back Crying Child as Michael? With this kind of mad science, anything is pretty much possible. Friendly Face is the title story from Fazbear Frights, book number 10. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want us to get more into the Fazbear Frights books and all of the stories in them, there's a lot of real good ones, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, if you give us a thumbs up, the next book will come sooner. Ha! Number 8, Coming Home. This story confirms the identity of the spirit that possesses Chica, although we had a pretty good indicator of that with the gravestones we saw in FNAF 6, and how they lined up with the animatronic heads seen in FNAF 3. However, this story pretty much confirms that theory to be true. Here we meet the spirit of a young girl named Susie, who knows she is nearing her time to pass over. She is able to move about her home, visiting her living and remaining family during the day, and looking for closure. Through her sister Samantha's drawings, she's able to communicate with her. Every night and permanently at the end of the story, Susie is spirited away by Chica. The story also leads us to believe that Susie has two sides, or maybe split personas, for her spirit, with this version in the story being peaceful and the one that possesses Chica being more aggressive and in pain or in agony. Coming Home is a story that appears in Fazbear Frights book number 4, Step Closer.
Number 6, Psychic Friend Fredbear is Tagalong Freddy. We finally have an official name for this animatronic toy. Psychic Friend Fredbear, named by MatPat, is actually Tagalong Freddy, who appears in the story The Cliffs out of the Fazbear Frights 7th book. Wow, I cannot believe we are already on book 7. I personally was hoping they'd just go with MatPat's name for this toy, but I guess Tagalong Freddy would probably sell better than Psychic Friend Fredbear, unless you're selling to Game Theorist fans. This is the toy that Tyler wants in the story, and that his father Robert buys for him. The toy also acts as a parental monitor. It watches your child and sends text-based updates to the parent about their well-being. Number 5, A Happier Ending. In the story The Cliffs, from the 7th installment of the Fazbear Frights story, we follow Robert, who is a single father. I've already talked about Tagalong Freddy and their connection to what MatPat often refers to as Psychic Friend Fredbear, but now it's time to talk about who Robert might be a stand-in for in in this story. Robert is a single father who mourns the loss of his wife and worries that as a single parent, he will fail his son Tyler. Oh no! He does his best to monitor Tyler, even buying him the parental monitor and toy that Tyler also wants, Tag-Along Freddy. After Tyler goes missing, Robert is driven to thoughts of taking his own life by Tag-Along Freddy's texts, but ultimately, he does not give in, gets rid of Tag-Along Freddy instead by throwing him off the cliff, and in so doing finds his son who is hiding below in a cave. The two reunite and head home, telling stories of Tyler's mom and Robert's deceased wife, Anna. So, Robert has a son who he is worried about providing for, a child who cries out, a child who he takes his eyes off of for a moment and who goes missing, and he has a dead wife. Does this sound like someone else we might know? Yeah, Robert is evidently meant to be William, but obviously his and Tyler's ending gives a happier alternative than the ending we think we know, at least from the FNAF game franchise, which has a lot more death and people turning into corpses in it. Number 4, security breach connection. I mean, this one is a hard one to miss, but one that we don't really fully understand just yet, should it be true. Obviously, in the first book, we have the story Into the Pit about a kid named Oswald who goes through a time-traveling ball pit back to 1985. With the 80s theme and a ball pit prominently featured in the trailer of Security Breach, many theorize that there might be a connection from this game to the first book. Is this the same ball pit? Is it possible that the game might somehow be based in 1985 and we'll run into Oswald or time travel through the pit ourselves as Gregory? It's more likely that the game is based in modern day, like we've pretty much been led to believe at this point, but who knows if the beginning of the game might be set in the 80s and it's only through the ball pit that we are able to get to modern day. Who really knows? Other than Scott Cawthon and his team of developers, I mean. They probably know. They know it all.
Number 3, the new kid. The new kid follows Devin and his friend Mick. These two young friends welcome a new kid into their group who also happens to be the new kid at school, Kelsey. Kelsey is popular because he is considered to be handsome and nice. While both friends find themselves feeling slightly jealous of Kelsey because of this, they also can't help but like him as well. Kelsey offers to let them use an empty room at his farmhouse for a new hangout spot, but too many people get invited to join, which means Devin and Mick ultimately get left out. Wah wah. To get revenge on Kelsey, Devin decides to pull a prank on him, taking both Mick and Kelsey to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for them to use as their new hangout spot. Devin makes Kelsey wear an abandoned golden Freddy suit, but the spring locks malfunction while Kelsey dances around in it, impaling him. Frightened, Devin and Mick make a break for it, leaving Kelsey behind, though Devin, feeling guilty, later returns planning to save Kelsey and nurse him back to health. However, when he reaches into the suit to try to help Kelsey, who he thinks is in there, his arm gets crushed by the animatronic's jaws, and he sees not Kelsey's blonde hair but black curly hair instead, on what appears to be a corpse. The implication at the end of the story is that Kelsey is the spirit or one of the spirits who haunts Golden Freddy, as we see him arrive at a new school attempting to befriend new students, even after his death. While many think Cassidy or Crying Child, or perhaps both, possess Golden Freddy, some have pondered if this is evidence that a third spirit might also possess the animatronic, and wonder if this could be Andrew, who is attached to the story The Man in Room 1280 and the Stitch Wraith epilogues. Or it could be possible that Andrew's actually the one possessing Golden Freddy and neither of the other spirits are. The New Kid is a story that comes to us from Fazbear Frights number 3, 1:35 a.m. Number 2, Into the Pit. Into the Pit is a really weird story from the book Fazbear Frights number 1, Into the Pit, about a time-traveling ball pit that exists within a present-day dingy pizza place called Jeff's Pizza. Oswald spends most of his days there not having much money to do anything else due to his dad losing his job at the local mill. While at Jeff's Pizza one day, Oswald hides from his dad, who he is mad at, in the ball pit. Hiding in the ball pit, he finds when he emerges that he is transported to a different place and time, ending up at what appears to be one of the Fazbear Pizza places circa 1985. He ends up making friends, but notices the sinister presence of a giant yellow bunny animatronic, who it turns out is not actually an animatronic at all. Through this story, we learn that time travel is seemingly possible in the world of FNAF, and we get a glimpse into what appears to be the missing kids incident, a day when multiple victims were seemingly targeted, or at least where that became apparent as the pizza place seems to be in chaos. Number 1, 1. The Real Jake. The Real Jake is from the 6th book in the series, Fazbear Frights number 6, Blackbird. It's through this story that we believe we get confirmation of the name of Crying Child, assuming the books and the game lore match up in the ways that we think, or at least are related. Jake follows the story of a young boy who is very sick, but who is comforted by a family friend, Margie, who looks after him, and a doll named Simon, with him while his father is overseas, serving in the military. His father's name is Evan, and it's revealed that his father also has a brother named Michael. What? Jake and Evan both don't survive through to the end of this story, but the fact that Evan, the suspected name for Crying Child, believed to be Michael Afton's younger brother, is mentioned and is actually connected to a brother named Michael in this story is huge, and for many has been used as supporting evidence to confirm that Evan is in fact Crying Child's real name. And if you're wondering where people got Evan from to begin with, it was from the survival logbook, so we've got like double evidence. Double evidence!
Number 10. Michael Afton wasn't really scooped. This is a theory just based off of the parallels that we see between the two characters. One, a night guard from the books, another, Eggs Benedict, aka Michael Afton in Sister Location. Both work at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but Eggs Benny works as a technician, and Stanley works as a security guard. Both work the night shift there. Michael has his body scooped and is worn out like a skin suit by Ennard. Stanley has his body filled with mini Renas each night while he sleeps on duty and ends up taking them out, hidden within his body. Of course, how they move to different parts of his body and escape his stomach without somehow killing him, we don't really know. But, you know, FNAF logic. Michael was scooped for goodness sakes, and somehow he still survived the process. MatPat suggests that not only are there similarities about these two characters, but he himself takes the theory a step farther by offering that the story is more a supplement for what really happened to Michael, giving us something a little more realistic. That slowly over time, as Michael worked each night, the animatronics were filling up his body with parts so that he would be able to remain alive, to take them all outside and help them escape after that last night. Still, not super realistic, but definitely more realistic than getting scooped, I guess. Number 9. Foxy Bro is Michael Afton. I once again have to give credit for this one to the brilliant, the one and only MatPat. Of course, I'm still wondering if there might be an even deeper connection to be found in the books between Michael Afton and Crying Child as well, but I think more of those connections come from the survival logbook. But I digress. What proves that Foxy Bro, aka Pete Dinglewood in the books, is Michael Afton? What connects Pete to Mike? Gum. And of course, the color purple. We believe the logbook of course belonged to Mike, and it's there that we find mention of him chewing gum excessively. While in the title story, Step Closer from Fazbear Frights issue number 4, we also see a connection in the fact that both characters turn purple and ultimately wind up seemingly dead, though somehow miraculously still alive. Or in Pete's case, at least, still conscious. Both of these connections seem to imply a connection between Peter and Mike, as both of their stories mirror each other's, implying that while Pete is connected to Foxy Bro from the games as a bully brother, Foxy Bro and Mike are also connected. Number 8. Balloon Boy's Hypno Powers. In the story Sergio's Lucky Day, out of the 8th Fazbear Frights book, Gumdrop Angel, we meet Sergio, a businessman who works too hard and, while successful, is unhappy with his life. One day he stumbles upon a Lucky Boy toy, named for the phrase on the t-shirt it wears, which reads, "I'm a lucky boy." The description of the toy seems to match that of Balloon Boy, and it seems to have influence over Sergio, convincing him of what is best for him to do. At first, these just seem like suggestions that Sergio is willing to entertain, and that also align with probably his own inner thoughts and feelings. But in the end, Sergio follows Lucky Boy's advice without any hesitation, even when he suggests that Sergio turn to self-mutilation to win over the woman of his dreams. This seems to imply that Lucky Boy has some kind of hypno powers, which we've seen other animatronics in the books display before, influencing the thoughts of those people they interact with or come across. If this is true, it makes me wonder if Balloon Boy, who Lucky Boy appears to be a smaller version of, might also possess these powers. does Balloon Boy also have hypno powers? I wonder.
Number 7, 1:35 a.m. 1:35 a.m. is significant because it potentially gives us a look at someone who is meant to be a stand-in or allusion to Mrs. Afton. Granted, it seems all we've really gotten is allusions to her character thus far, which really makes me wonder if she even exists, and if the Afton children might not just be solely robotic creations of Williams. But I digress. In 1:35 a.m. we follow the story of Delilah, who becomes haunted by an alarm clock doll she purchases at a garage sale, who wakes her up in the middle of the night every night, even after she has already thrown the doll out. Delilah has a pretty tragic backstory filled with love and loss, and the doll Ella reminds Delilah of the child she has always wanted, which was why she bought it in the first place. Exhausted, Delilah ends up dying in an event in a nearby building that is under construction, possibly alluding to the death of the unknown person mentioned to us in Sister Location by Hand Unit. 1:35 a.m. comes to us from the Fazbear Frights book of the same name, which is book number 3 in the series. Number 6, To Be Beautiful. To Be Beautiful is a disturbing story that follows Sarah, a young girl who just wants to be beautiful because she believes that this is why no one notices her. She finds an animatronic named Eleanor, cleans her up, and in exchange for restoring her appearance and rescuing her, Eleanor promises to grant Sarah a wish. This is one of those be careful what you wish for stories. Sarah tells Eleanor of her desire to be beautiful. Eleanor sets out to make Sarah's wish come true, but does so in a very disturbing way, effectively giving Sarah surgery at night while she sleeps. While Sarah wakes up every morning feeling more and more beautiful as parts of her progressively changed, in the end we learn that Eleanor really had been replacing parts of Sarah with junk. Eleanor gave Sarah a necklace to wear, and when this is accidentally removed, the truth is basically revealed. Eleanor herself is revealed to have somehow used these parts to create her own kind of glamour, transforming into Sarah pre-surgery when she presses her own matching necklace. Eleanor appears to also look a lot like Circus Baby from Sister Location, leading many to think that this might be one of Baby's escape attempts that went well and she was just using like another name, Eleanor, or that Eleanor herself is a different Circus Baby model and there are multiple Circus Babies out there. We always knew that Circus Baby could kind of modify her appearance using her pins, but this adds a whole new layer to the level of shapeshifting she could be capable of. To Be Beautiful is a story that comes to us from Fazbear Frights number 1, Into the Pit. Number 5, Epilogue number 1. While we haven't yet seen the character in the games, the first epilogue introduces us to the Stitch Wraith. The Stitch Wraith for a long time was a character of great mystery. We didn't really know who the Stitch Wraith was, or even why they were there. Later on we'd find out many important pieces of lore and facts in relation to how the world works via the Stitch Wraith and their story. So the introduction of this character and their mysterious case in the first epilogue was pretty important in terms of what it led us to later. It's unclear if this is a character that we could see showing up in the games at any time soon or not, but many fans have speculated that sooner or later we'll at least see some kind of reference to the Stitch Wraith in the FNAF game universe. Number 4, The Man in Room 1280. This story was initially intended to be the last story we'd get in the Fazbear Frights series, but the book series was extended from 5 books total to 11. However, its initial intended place as the final story does make it still quite important, because you gotta remember this was the story that originally we were thinking this is gonna be it, and when they were writing the books they thought this was gonna be it. The Man in Room 1280 was thought of as being the continuation of William Afton's story, as it is believed he is the unknown man who is still somehow badly damaged and burned but miraculously alive in the hospital. Even after they took him off of life support, he still somehow continued to live. The spirit who is seemingly keeping him alive is believed to be Andrew, the vengeful spirit who is attached to the Stitch Wraith, and possibly also the child we see in the Happiest Day minigame, who wears the alligator mask, possibly Montgomery Gator's mask. We don't really know that yet, but that's what it seems to be. The Man in Room 1280 comes to us from the 5th Fazbear Frights book, Bunny Call.
Number 1, William Afton's grandson? So if this is true that Evan is Crying Child, the younger brother of Michael aka Foxy Bro and the son of William, then that would mean that Jake from the story of The Real Jake is also William Afton's grandson. What's more, this Jake is heavily implied to also be the Jake that we meet in the epilogue stories from the books, the one who ends up sharing the body of the Stitch Wraith with with the spirit of Andrew, and who inevitably becomes the sole inhabitant of the dressed up endoskeleton that we know as Stitch Wraith. Jake is also seen as the lighter spirit, as the more positive spirit who only wants to do what is right. Is it possible that the Stitch Wraith and William's grandson could be the key to truly defeating him once and for all?
So the 10th Fazbear Frights book released yesterday, which was a nice little birthday present from Scott. I totally believed he had it planned that way. Sarcasm. But the title story of Friendly Faces certainly has a lot more to it than meets the eye. My original prediction that this could have been about Crying Child and how he became a robot is starting to look more likely now that the series has doubled its originally intended size. But nonetheless, that theory is what we're exploring today. Greetings gamers and welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I'm Connor Monroe and I just got back from vacation. So what better things to do than jump right back into FNAF after I haven't had to think about the demon in my closet for over a week. Ah yes, this is Fazbear Frights Friendly Faces. Is Crying Child? Let's do it. Now before we can get into the theory, I'm going to provide a synopsis so that we can actually have a better understanding about the story. And since the book has literally been out for a day at this point, this is your spoiler warning, because I'm nice. This theory, however, does currently only involve Friendly Faces and neither of the other two stories or the epilogue. So if you want to read it and then come back, go right ahead. It's okay. Your clicking on this already counts as a view. Okay, now that all the sissies are out of here, let's talk Fazbear Frights. Going by the synopsis on the wiki so that this information can be available to anyone and everyone even after you watch this video. Quote, Edward drops his bowl of cereal while he was distracted. His mother warns him to pay attention to his surroundings to avoid accidents. This dozing off also causes Edward to embarrass himself in science class when he pours pepper onto a magnet, which sprays the pepper everywhere and gets into the student's eyes. It's iffy, but either way, I think that both Jack and Edward represent the Crying Child, except they both represent different versions of the Crying Child that we see. The one that gets killed and then put back together by William, being Jack, and the one who dies and stays dead, being Edward. This may seem a little weird, but allow me to explain why I think this. Both characters have connections to the Crying Child. They're bullied, have an absent parent who's either gone completely or most of the time, and while yes, that parent is their father, at least it's consistent. There are also multiple things that we can confirm from this story, like how it's canon for animatronics to be created with the intent of bringing back a loved one, similar to what we see happen with Charlie and Henry Emily in the original novel trilogy, and that the loved one can appear as either an animal or a human, as the company only said that the multiple hairs were an anomaly or abnormality instead of an actual issue, like Susie's dog or perhaps Crying Child. And after receiving the Friendly Faces animatronic, Edward experiences what is in essence a night terror, searching around his house for whatever is making that noise, listening at his door and checking outside with a flashlight, looking at his bed to make sure if there's anything there. Does this sound familiar? Because it should. This is the exact concept of FNAF 4, the game in which Crying Child is introduced, dies, and is in a coma. Edward also ends up being scared by an animatronic, just as Crying Child is scared in FNAF 4. This whole storm scene along with the subsequent restless nights we hear about is exactly the kind of connection we see in other stories. And the whole looking down the hall and not seeing anything but you can hear something running from door to door is straight up ripped out of the Fun with Plushtrap minigame from FNAF 4 that also appears in FNAF VR. And Plushtrap is actually a good approximation as to how big this Friendly Faces animatronic would reasonably be. Plus he's straight up listening at the door, holding it closed, and then looks outside with a flashlight trying to catch something. That's FNAF 4! There is such a heavy connection here that I believe Edward and Jack both individually represent the different sections of the FNAF fandom and their views on the Crying Child's fate, since I doubt we'll ever get an actual explanation, because that would make things too easy. Now, going off that, there is also something that I wanted to mention, that I actually kind of predicted way back when I heard about this book coming out, in one of the top 10 Tiny Details lists. Here's a clip of me from part 11 in the Tiny Details You Don't Really Think About series. It has the description of, quote, Andrew can't spend his money fast enough on a happy companion guaranteed to keep his friend's memory alive. Which sounds awfully familiar to me, since it's my theory about what happened to Crying Child, how William programmed a robot to be an older version of Crying Child, except named him Michael and gave him memories of killing his younger brother in an effort to keep him away from the Fazbear restaurants. But also, the name Andrew rings a bell, since it's the name of the spirit who possesses William and the man in room 1280, who had been keeping him alive from the inside. And I won't be surprised if Andrew's friend absolutely loves pizza. While I did say Andrew instead of Edward, the idea remains the same. I was just reading a wrong synopsis. That I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Jack ended up liking pizza, since in the survival logbook we see Mike writing about how he loves pizza and only took the job at Freddy Fazbear's because employees get free pizza. And while it may not have been Jack, what do we see on page 37? Quote, if you haven't showered by the end of the day, pizza is a thing of the past. Edward gave his mom a look of mock horror. No pizza? And with Edward not having showered in 2 weeks at this point, his mom knew she would have to say something that would really get him moving in order to get him to shower. So look at that, a character who is very clearly representing Crying Child and also has a link to loving pizza. And what do we see in the survival logbook from Mike? A link to loving pizza. More mentions about pizza than chewing gum actually. So if one mention of chewing gum in the logbook is enough for a connection, what about 2 mentions of loving pizza? Yeah, I think you see where I'm going with this. There we have it, friends, the updated version of my FNAF theory. Fazbear Frights' friendly faces is Crying Child. What do you think, and do you have anything to add? Be sure you let me know down below. Speaking of comments, I'm going to be responding to some from previous videos. Vanessa Afton said, Vanny's mask actually appears in Aftermath, so that statement is false. As he is walking home one day, he finds his friendly face on the street. It chases Edward into the forest and tries to curl around his ankles. As he runs into the woods, though, he gets hit by a truck and dies from bleeding out. The friendly face then waits by Edward's limp, dead body, wanting him to get up so they can play some more. End quote. First of all, I just want to say that pepper thing, absolutely genius. I'm doing that later. Like, I'm going back to college specifically so I can do that. Anyway, with this we can instantly establish our main characters, Edward, Jack, and the cat known as Faraday. There are a couple of things that stick out to me because of this. One, that Jack and Evan share the same amount of letters, which isn't much on its own, and I mean, like, Evan isn't even a confirmed name, but it's still something. And Edward and Jack are also 2 names that I've seen people call Crying Child in the comments on multiple occasions. This story also revolves around someone's love that ends up making a robotic version of a loved one, even if accidental. That's also in a way what many people believe happened to Crying Child, that he became an animatronic by possessing either Fredbear or Golden Freddy, which would be a combination of animal and animatronic, even if it's not to this literal an extent. The story also proves that it's still canon for animatronics to be created with the intent of bringing back a loved one, similar to what we see happen with Henry and Charlie Emily in the original novel trilogy. And considering how Scott said these books would help fill in some blanks from the past, it's worth taking note of since this proves that animatronics can be created in people's images, and it's drawing attention to that point like it's still important. And even if it was meant to be a cat, it still has part of Jack inside, like how a robot would still have the human still inside of them even if it's in a coded form. Plus, I mean, like, the cat who Edward intended on bringing back was named Faraday, after the famous scientist Michael Faraday. And I think we all know who the most famous Michael on this channel is. Yes, the older brother, who I keep saying is a robot. And here we are, with a robot cat whose name just so happens to be based off of Michael. Coincidence? I think not! Especially when this robot who's named after a Michael has someone else inside them. Someone whose name has 4 letters. Like how I've been suggesting that Michael is a robot version of Crying Child who's implanted with different memories and told that he killed his brother so that he wouldn't return to Fazbear restaurants. Or at the very least, Crying Child ends up possessing Michael after he dies in the hospital, since that would also make more sense and explain the hallucinations and whatever else we see. Now, there is definitely more to this theory that I can investigate. However, I haven't actually received my book in the mail yet. I mean, like, I pre-ordered it on Amazon, and hopefully it will be here soon. But when it does, I assure you that I will make a follow-up or an update to this theory, whether it helps my case or ruins it. Last time I talked about Fazbear Frights, I talked about how the story of friendly faces could represent what really happened to Crying Child. And I guess that Jack, who becomes part of the robot that is recreated by the Friendly Faces program from Fazbear Entertainment, which is the basis of this story, was actually meant to be the solution I had been expecting. That Crying Child was remade into a robot after dying because he got crushed by Fredbear. I also said that I would update you when I got my book and got the chance to read it. And as I'm writing this, I literally just finished the story. So let's talk Fazbear Frights and my FNAF theory. Fazbear Frights' Friendly Faces is Crying Child, updated edition. let's do it. Now, before we can get into the actual theory, I'm going to be providing a synopsis so that we can have a better understanding of the story. But just like last time, this is your spoiler warning, because again, I'm nice. This theory, however, does only involve friendly faces in either of the two other stories or the epilogue in that book, so you can just read the story and come back, or you can just have me spoil it for you. It doesn't really matter. We're also going to be going by the synopsis on the wiki so that everyone can have this information again if they want to be able to see it multiple times instead of just having to have the book. Unless you want my beautiful and soothing voice to read it to you, in that case, just rewind the video. Edward drops his bowl of cereal while he was distracted. His mother warns him to pay attention to his surroundings to avoid accidents. This dozing off also causes Edward to embarrass himself in his science class when he pours pepper onto a magnet, which sprays the pepper everywhere and gets into the student's eyes. On the bus ride home, Edward laments to his friend Jack on how much he messes up and how much he has to apologize for his mistakes. As the two get off the bus and walk home, Edward and Jack discover an abandoned kitten which they name Faraday, after the famous scientist Michael Faraday. They begin teaching the cat tricks and formed a strong bond with it as the months go by. One day, Faraday follows a butterfly onto the street. Jack chases it to try to keep it safe, but they both end up getting hit by a truck and die. Having witnessed the accident, Edward is traumatized and mourns their deaths, especially since they were his only two friends. While watching TV, an advertisement by Fazbear Entertainment abruptly appears for their Friendly Faces service. It's a program that recreates a lost pet by using the pet's DNA to create its face, then adds it to an animatronic body, creating a new companion in their image that will last forever. Edward pays for the expensive service and then took some of the hair from Faraday's corpse, accidentally taking some of Jack's hair as well. After a few weeks, a package from Fazbear Entertainment is sent to Edward's house, appearing in front of his doorstep on a stormy night. He's horrified by the cat inside, which had Jack's face on it. The cat, called the Friendly Face, kept smiling at Edward, not moving at all. He forces the cat back into the box and buries it in the backyard. Despite being buried though, the cat doesn't stop smiling. During the night, he hears sounds throughout the house, the hallway, the living room, his bedroom, and even from behind him, but Edward can't find anything. He eventually heads back to bed, until the cat, still covered in mud, appears on the foot of his bed. His mother came in when she hears him scream, but the cat had already disappeared. Months pass, and Edward sees the Friendly Face constantly stalking him. However, as soon as he sees it, it disappears. He almost goes insane as he starts to hear ticking and chittering everywhere. As he's walking home one day, he finds the Friendly Face on the street. It chases Edward into the forest and tries to curl around his ankles. As he runs out of the woods though, he gets hit by a truck and dies from bleeding out. The Friendly Face waits by Edward's limp dead body, wanting him to get up so they can play some more. Now, after reading the story and getting some more detail about certain scenes and learning more about these characters, first of all, that synopsis. On the bus ride home, Edward laments to his friend Jack on how much he messes up, and how much he has to apologize for his mistakes. As the two get off the bus and walk home, Edward and Jack discover an abandoned kitten, which they named Faraday, after the famous scientist Michael Faraday. They begin teaching the cat tricks and formed a strong bond with it as the months go by. One day though, Faraday follows a butterfly onto the street. Jack chases it to try to keep him safe, but they both get hit by a truck and die. Having witnessed the accident, Edward is understandably traumatized and mourns their deaths, especially since they were his only two friends. While watching TV, an advertisement by Fazbear Entertainment abruptly appears, advertising their Fazbear Friendly Faces service. It's a program that recreates a lost pet by using the pet's DNA to create its face and then adds it to an animatronic body, creating a new companion in their image. Edward pays for the expensive service and took some hair from Faraday's corpse, accidentally taking some of Jack's hair as well. After a few weeks, a package from Fazbear Entertainment is sent to Edward's house, appearing in front of his doorstep on a stormy night. He is horrified by the cat inside, because it has Jack's face on it. The cat, called the Friendly Face, kept smiling at Edward, not moving at all. He forces the cat back into the box and then buries it in the backyard. Because, you know, that's gonna work. Despite being buried, the cat doesn't stop smiling. During the night, he hears sounds throughout the house, the hallway, the living room, his bedroom, and even from behind him, but Edward can't seem to find anything. He eventually heads back to bed, until the cat, still covered in mud, appears on his bed. Typical cats, man. His mother came in when she heard his screams, but the cat had disappeared. Months pass, and Edward sees the Friendly Face constantly stalking him. However, as soon as he sees it, it disappears. He almost goes insane as he started to hear ticking and chittering everywhere. Watch Fusion Z Gamer play that game. Okay, so you're trying to prove me wrong about security breach taking place before FNAF VR by using a FNAF fan game? Really? That's a fan game. It's a non-canon source. Why do you think that that has any sway in this conversation? Plus, your username is Vanessa Afton, a character who can only exist if security breach takes place before FNAF ER, because at the point of FNAF ER, she would be way too old to be a security guard. So like, I don't know what's going on here. Whereas Prototype 3 said fan games don't count since they're non-canon and are a different universe. While this is a good argument as to why you can't use fan games as evidence in theories, I'm perfectly capable of using a fan game in a list about Springlock victims when there hasn't been 10 of them in the main canon. Plus, it never said official Springlock victims in the title, so it could have been from anywhere. Hell, I could have made them all up, okay, and it still would have been fine. It still would have been the video, so yes, they do count. Talamogabat said, I just want to tell you that Ballora is a kind woman called Clara, and she's actually William Afton's wife. Clara Afton doesn't exist, and Ballora is only possessed, potentially, by the souls of the original 5 missing children, because she could have been injected with their remnant like we see in the FNAF novels. There is no evidence to support her being possessed by anyone, especially not William's wife, who at this point has no name. No, but seriously, am I gonna have to do like a whole deep dive video about this topic? Because a lot of people still seem confused by it. Like, if you think that Ballora is possessed by Clara Afton, or think that Clara Afton is canon and is actually a thing, please go watch our top 10 FNAF lore versus theories video. Something like that, okay? Link will be in the iCard in the top right corner. Please go watch that, because Clara Afton is not a thing. It's not a thing. Buniz said, this needs more likes. For real, it's so funny and so underrated. To be completely honest, I had even forgotten about this video. So yes, go watch top 10 FNAF animatronics who would make the best friends, okay? Do it now. It's a funny video. It's along the lines of tastiest animatronics, okay? It's a good one.